The first cock had not yet finished clearing his throat when the sleepy village of Umuoji was already stretching itself awake. Roosters competed as though they were contesting for the office of village town crier. Cock-a-doo-doo-doo. Another answered from the next compound. A third one, who had more confidence than talent, screamed until he lost his voice halfway. Old Mama Nwaka, sweeping her compound, shook her head. Even the rooster that cannot pronounce its own name has become a musician. The village slowly came alive. Women balanced clay pots on their heads as they walked to the stream. Children chased one another barefoot. Goats chewed leaves with the confidence of politicians spending public money. The air smelled of roasted corn, wood smoke, and fresh morning dew. In that peaceful village lived one man whose body could never stay still. His name was Okoro Scratch-Anywhere. Nobody remembered his real surname anymore. Even children born yesterday knew him as Scratch-Anywhere. If his neck itched, he scratched. If his ear itched, he scratched. If his back itched, he scratched with anything available: a stick, a hoe, the corner of a wall, another person's fence, even unsuspecting goats. If nothing was nearby, he would bend himself into shapes that looked like a masquerade trying to tie its own wrapper. People laughed until tears rolled down their cheeks. One afternoon, he scratched his back so passionately against an iroko tree that the tree shed dry bark. An old hunter passing by looked at the tree and whispered, "Who attacked this innocent iroko?" The little boy answered, "Uncle Okoro's back." The hunter nodded slowly. That explains everything. Okoro believed in one philosophy. If something is disturbing you, remove the disturbance immediately. His wife, Mbik, always warned him. Everything doesn't require instant action. Okoro waved his hand. If your nose itches, will you hold a village meeting before scratching it? No. If smoke enters your eyes, will you write a letter to the chief before blinking? No. So why delay? His wife sighed. This man will one day scratch trouble. One market day, the entire village gathered at the square because the oldest man in Umuoji, Poor Ezekiel, was celebrating his 95th planting season. People came from neighboring villages carrying yams, palm wine, goats, baskets of kola nuts and gifts. Drummers beat their drums. Women danced. Young men wrestled. The air vibrated with laughter. Even the lazy village dogs barked simply because everybody else was making noise. At the center of the celebration stood the oldest masquerade costume in the village. It was sacred. Nobody touched it except the chief priest. The costume had been displayed before the ceremony. Children admired it from a distance. Adults warned one another. "Don't go near it." Okoro nodded confidently. "I am not a child." While people danced, something tiny happened. A stubborn ant climbed inside Okoro's wrapper. Not just any ant. One of those tiny red ants that believe every human being is a mountain they must conquer. It crawled. Then it bit. Okoro jumped. "Oh." He smiled awkwardly. "No problem." The ant moved higher. It bit again. He shifted his legs. His wife noticed. "What happened?" "Nothing." The ant continued climbing. Then, another bite. This time, fire seemed to explode inside his wrapper. His eyes widened. His lips trembled. His legs began dancing without permission. The drummers thought he had invented a new dance step. They increased the tempo. Dum. 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 People clapped. Okoro. Dance. Dance. Only Okoro knew he was not dancing. He was negotiating with pain. The ant bit again. He whispered. "Yezu. Chinik, Somebody help me. His wife leaned closer. What is wrong? He forced a smile. Nothing. You are sweating. I am dancing. You are crying. I am dancing emotionally. They each became unbearable. Inside his head, two voices began arguing. The first voice said, endure it. The second voice shouted, scratch now. The first replied, people are watching. The second laughed. Will people's eyes remove the ant? The first whispered, wait until the ceremony ends. The second screamed, if you wait any longer, the ant will establish a local government inside your wrapper. Okoro swallowed. His body shook. He folded his arms. He bit his lips. He stamped the ground. Nothing worked. Finally, his famous philosophy won. When something itches, the natural tendency is to scratch. Without thinking, he plunged both hands into his wrapper with the determination of a farmer harvesting yams. He scratched. Left. Right. Up. Down. Round and round. He forgot where he was. He forgot the crowd. He forgot dignity. He scratched like a man trying to rescue his ancestors. People stopped dancing. Drums became silent. Children froze. Even the village goats paused their chewing. Only one sound remained. S-C-A-R. 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 The village watched in stunned silence. Then one child laughed. Another joined. Then another. Within seconds, the entire square exploded with laughter. One old woman laughed so hard her head tie fell into a pot of pepper soup. A palm wine tapper rolled on the ground shouting, someone should help this man before he scratches himself into another village. Even poor Ezekiel, whose celebration it was, laughed until tears filled his eyes. But disaster had only begun. As Okoro scratched furiously, his elbow struck the sacred masquerade costume. It toppled straight into a pot of fresh white chalk prepared for blessings. The costume became completely white. The chief priest screamed, my ancestors! Women scattered. Children ran. The drummers abandoned their drums. One frightened goat jumped into a basket of tomatoes. The tomato seller fainted immediately. The chief priest held his head. In over 200 years, nobody has ever knocked down the sacred costume. Everyone turned to look at the guilty man. Okoro slowly withdrew his hands from his wrapper. The ant finally fell onto the ground. It looked at him proudly as if to say, my assignment here is complete. Okoro looked at the costume. Then at the chief priest. Then at the villagers. Then at his wife. Mbik folded her arms. I warned you. Okoro swallowed so loudly that people in the next compound heard it. The village chief stood up. Okoro. Why yes, your highness. Did an enemy attack you? No. Did a snake enter your clothes? No. Then why did you fight your own wrapper in front of the entire village? Okoro answered honestly. My body was itching. Silence. Then the oldest elder smiled and said, my son, when something itches, the natural tendency is indeed to scratch. He paused. But wisdom teaches us where, when, and how to scratch. The laughter disappeared. Everyone became quiet. The elder continued. A man who scratches without thinking may remove the itch, but create a bigger pain. Those words settled over the gathering like evening dew. Okoro lowered his head. He had scratched away a tiny discomfort. And accidentally invited a mountain of embarrassment. Little did he know that this was only the beginning. Before the next full moon, another itch, this time not on his body but in his heart, would drag the whole village into a far greater and far funnier disaster. After the embarrassing incident at poor Ezekiel's celebration, the whole village of Umuoji found a new source of entertainment. The children no longer sang, "Rain, rain, go away." Instead, they marched through the dusty footpaths chanting, "Scratch anywhere. Scratch anywhere. If your body itches, hide the masquerade." Each time they saw Okoro, they would burst into laughter and scatter before he could chase them. One little boy, Chokudi, became especially troublesome. Whenever Okoro walked past, he would dramatically scratch every part of his body. "My ear is itching. My knee is itching. My eyebrow is itching. My shadow is itching." The other children would collapse with laughter. Okoro would pretend to be angry. "If I catch you, I will tie you to an anthill." The children would shout back, "You first." Even old women fetching water laughed behind their wrappers. Mbik, his wife, tried to comfort him. "Don't worry. Villagers have short memories." An old woman overheard. "Who said so?" "The same people who still remind me that I fell inside the stream 22 years ago." Everyone laughed. Mbik sighed. She had forgotten where she was. In Umuoji, memories never died. They simply became stories. A week later, another excitement filled the village. A wealthy trader from the neighboring kingdom of Obinago was expected to arrive. His name was Chief Nedi. People said he owned more cows than there were mosquitoes in the rainy season. Others claimed his yam barns had their own shadows. Some even whispered that his goats had servants. Nobody knew which stories were true. But one thing was certain. Chief Nedi loved doing business with honest people. Whoever impressed him usually became richer before the next harvest. Naturally, everybody wanted to impress him. The village square was swept until even the dust looked polished. Palm fronds decorated the entrance. Fresh raffia mats were spread beneath the giant udala tree. The women prepared pounded yam. The aroma of bitter leaf soup floated through the air like an invitation from heaven. The men arranged carved stools. The drummers rehearsed. Even the lazy village dogs washed themselves in puddles, hoping someone would mistake them for respectable animals. Okoro made a promise to himself. "Today, I shall behave like a chief." His wife raised one eyebrow. "Can you manage that?" "I have learnt my lesson." "You won't embarrass yourself." "I won't." "You won't embarrass me." "I swear." "You won't embarrass the village." "I swear twice." She smiled. "For the first time in many years, I believe you." Unfortunately, life was already preparing another examination. As the guests settled down, something landed on Okoro's left ear. It was not an ant. It was worse. A stubborn housefly. It rubbed its tiny legs together as if warming up for a competition. Then, it crawled into the edge of his ear. The inside of his ear suddenly tickled. Okoro blinked. He ignored it. The fly buzzed. BCCCC. Then crawled deeper. His shoulders twitched. "No. I have changed. I am now a disciplined man." The fly disagreed. It buzzed louder. Then its tiny legs danced inside his ear. Okoro's left eye closed. His right shoulder rose. His mouth bent sideways. People thought he was winking. One elder smiled proudly. "See that man? He has become mature." Another elder nodded. Embarrassment is an expensive teacher. If only they knew. Inside Okoro's head, the familiar argument returned. One voice whispered, "Ignore it." The second voice shouted, "Scratch. The first answered, "You promised your wife." The second replied, "Did you promise your ear?" The first insisted, "Endure." The second laughed. The fly is organizing a village meeting inside your head. Okoro clenched his fist. The fly buzzed again. This time it tickled so badly that he almost sneezed. He pinched himself. He stamped his foot. He beat the inside of his cheek. Nothing helped. Then, an idea entered his head. "I won't scratch with my hand. I'll simply shake my head. Nobody will notice." He gently shook his head. The fly refused to leave. He shook harder. Still nothing. He shook even harder. Now his whole body was moving. Chief Nedi stopped talking. He stared. The elders stared. The drummers stopped. The fly continued enjoying itself. Determined to appear dignified, Okoro increased the force. He jerked his head violently. At that exact moment, the large calabash of fresh palm wine resting beside him lost its balance. It rolled. Nobody noticed. Except one skinny dog. The dog rushed forward. Thinking food had arrived, another dog joined. Within seconds, the two dogs began fighting over absolutely nothing. They barked, growled, beat the air, jumped onto the raffia mats. Guests stood up. Children screamed with excitement. One frightened goat believed it was under attack. It dashed into the cooking area. The women shouted, "My soup!" The goat knocked over a basket of peppers. Another goat saw the peppers falling. Thinking it was a feast from heaven, it joined. Soon 6 goats were eating peppers. The next thing anyone heard was, "Mia." The goats began coughing, running, jumping, sneezing. One goat accidentally jumped onto the drummers. The biggest drum rolled downhill. Children chased it. The drummers chased the children. The goat chased nobody. It was too busy regretting the peppers. In the middle of all the confusion, the stubborn fly calmly flew out of Okoro's ear. It landed on the nose of the village chief. The chief crossed his eyes trying to see it. Then it flew away. Free. Satisfied. Mission accomplished. The entire village slowly turned toward the one man who had started everything. Okoro. He looked at the overturned palm wine, the running goats, the crying cooks, the confused dogs, the scattered guests. Then he quietly whispered, "It was only a fly." One old woman shouted, "Only a fly? My son, a mosquito is small, yet it can keep an entire household awake." Chief Nedi burst into laughter. Not ordinary laughter. The kind that made him remove his cap to wipe tears. "My friends," he said, "this village has given me the greatest entertainment of my life." Even the village chief could not stop laughing. Finally, he raised his hand. "Enough." Silence returned. The chief looked directly at Okoro. "My son." "Yes, Your Highness." "The first time, your body itched." "Yes." "Today, your ear itched." "Yes." "But I fear something greater." Okoro swallowed. "What is it?" The chief answered slowly. "I pray your heart never begins to itch." The elders exchanged knowing glances. Okoro frowned. "What does that mean?" The oldest elder smiled. "A body may itch because of an insect. An ear may itch because of a fly. But when the heart begins to itch, it hungers for what belongs to another. It rushes toward gossip. It envies. It becomes greedy. And that kind of scratching can destroy families, friendships, and even kingdoms." The square became unusually quiet. Even the goats seemed to listen. Okoro nodded respectfully. He believed he understood. But fate smiled quietly. For before another market day arrived, his heart would indeed begin to itch, not from envy or greed, but from an irresistible urge to interfere in a matter that was none of his business. And that scratch would shake Umuoji far more than an ant, a fly, or a masquerade ever could. The people of Umuoji had a saying. The ear that enjoys gossip today may become the mouth of apology tomorrow. Unfortunately, no one loved helping other people's matters more than Okoro. If two women lowered their voices to talk, Okoro's legs would mysteriously carry him close to them. If two elders whispered beneath the Udola tree, he would suddenly remember that he had important business under the same tree. If strangers passed through the village discussing anything quietly, Okoro's ears would stretch farther than a rabbit's. His wife, Mbik, often warned him. One day, your curiosity will borrow trouble that your strength cannot repay. Okoro laughed. I am not gossiping. I only like knowing what is happening. Mbik folded her arms. And what happens after you know? I simply tell others. She slapped her forehead. Exactly. One bright market morning, a young palm wine tapper named Okachukwu came running through the village. His wrapper was dusty. His breathing was heavy. He headed straight for the compound of the village chief. The elders immediately knew something important had happened. But before anyone could ask, the chief instructed. This matter concerns the council alone. No one should disturb us. The elders entered the meeting hut. The door closed. Silence. Now. There are some people who can ignore a closed door. Okoro was not one of them. The moment he heard, this matter concerns the council alone, his heart began to itch. Not his back. Not his ear. His heart. Inside his mind, the familiar voices returned. One whispered, "Go home." The other replied, "What if something interesting is happening?" The first insisted, "It is none of your business." The second laughed. "If it is happening in your village, it is small your business." The first pleaded, "Leave it alone." The second shouted, "Just one look." Okoro scratched his chin. "No. I won't interfere." He took 3 steps toward home. Stopped. Turned around. Maybe I should only pass by. He walked toward the council hut. I won't listen. He reached the window. I'll just stand. He stood. I won't peep. He bent. I'll only check whether everyone is fine. Then, he placed one eye against the tiny crack in the mud wall. Inside, the elders were discussing something serious. Okachukwu spoke quietly. Elders, I found a leather bag hanging from a palm tree. It contains many gold coins. A loud murmur filled the room. The oldest elder asked, "Did anyone see you?" "No." "Have you told anyone?" "No." The chief smiled proudly. "You have done well. We shall announce it publicly so the rightful owner can identify it." Outside, Okoro's eyes widened. Gold. His heart began beating like festival drums. Before he could hear the rest, someone sneezed inside. He panicked. Thinking he had been caught, he jumped backward. Unfortunately, he landed inside a basket of drying fish. The basket overturned. Fish scattered everywhere. Cats appeared from nowhere. Nobody knew where they had been hiding. Within seconds, 5 cats were dragging fish in different directions. The fish seller screamed, "My business!" Children chased the cats. The cats chased the fish. The fish, of course, chased nobody. Embarrassed, Okoro ran. But something strange happened. As he ran through the market, his mind kept repeating only one sentence. A bag of gold coins. Unfortunately, his mouth had no luck. Before reaching home, he met his friend, Nwofa. Nwofa asked, "Why are you sweating?" Okoro whispered, "Promise you won't tell anyone." "I promise." "There is a bag of gold hidden in the council hut." Nwofa's eyes nearly escaped from his face. "Gold?" "Yes. But don't tell anybody." "I won't." 5 minutes later, Nwofa met the village barber. "Promise you won't tell anyone." The barber met the blacksmith. "Promise you won't tell anyone." The blacksmith met his apprentice. "Promise you won't tell anyone." The apprentice met his girlfriend. "Promise you won't tell anyone." His girlfriend told her mother. Her mother told the women at the stream. Before sunset, the story had grown legs. Some people said there were 100 bags. Others claimed they were filled with diamonds. Another insisted soldiers had buried a king's treasure in Umuoji. One old man confidently announced, "I heard there are enough coins to buy every goat in 10 villages." Nobody asked where he heard it. That night, nobody slept. Some carried lanterns. Some carried hoes. Some carried shovels. People secretly dug behind their compounds. Others searched abandoned huts. One man even dug inside his own yam barn. Instead of treasure, he found the snake that had been eating his rats. The snake was equally surprised. Both screamed. Nobody knew which scream belonged to whom. By morning, the entire village looked as though giant pigs had rooted through every compound. Fresh holes. Broken fences. Destroyed flower beds. Even the chief's old mango tree had been dug around. Children laughed until their stomachs hurt. One little girl asked her grandmother, "Did the earth offend everybody yesterday?" When the council finally gathered everyone in the village square, the chief looked around in disbelief. "What happened to Umuoji?" Nobody answered. The chief sighed. Then he raised the leather bag. "My people, this bag was found yesterday. It belongs to a traveling merchant who passed through our village. He has already identified every item inside. The bag has now been returned." The merchant stepped forward, tears in his eyes. "I thought I had lost everything." He rewarded Okochukwu with gifts for his honesty. The villagers clapped. Then the chief frowned. "But my council discussed this matter in secret." "So, who spread the rumor?" Silence. Even the chickens stopped scratching the ground. The chief looked around slowly. Finally, one tiny boy raised his hand. It was Uncle Okoro. Every head turned. Okoro wished the earth would politely open and rent him a room. The chief asked calmly, "Did you enter the council meeting?" "No." "Did you peep?" "A little." "Did you spread the story?" "Only to one person." The whole village burst into laughter. One elder slapped his knee. "Only one person. In this village, one mouth is enough to wake 1,000 ears." Even Big could not defend her husband. She simply covered her face with her wrapper and laughed until tears rolled down her cheeks. The oldest elder rose slowly. "My people, the proverb says, when something itches, the natural tendency is to scratch." Our friend scratched an itch in his body and embarrassed himself. He scratched an itch in his ear and caused confusion. Today, he scratched the itch in his heart. And look. He stretched both hands toward the countless holes scattered around the village. The whole village ended up scratching the ground. The entire square erupted in thunderous laughter. Even Okoro laughed. He laughed because he finally understood. Not every itch deserves an immediate scratch. Some should be endured. Some should be ignored. And some should be handed over to wisdom before the fingers begin to move. From that day onward, whenever anyone in Umuoji acted in haste, rushed into another person's matter, or reacted without thinking, the elders would simply smile and say, "Careful! Don't become another Okoro Scratch-Anywhere." And immediately, the whole village would laugh, not to mock him anymore, but to remember the priceless lesson he had unknowingly taught them. Moral lessons. 1. Just because you feel an urge does not mean you should act on it. 2. Wisdom is knowing when, where, and how to respond. 3. Curiosity without self-control often creates bigger problems than the one you wanted to solve. 4. A small action done without thinking can have consequences for an entire community. 5. Patience is often the best scratch for the itches of life. And so ends the tale of Okoro Scratch-Anywhere, the man whose little itches taught a whole village the value of self-control.